This is Boxing Tickets NI in association with SB Sports and Chaco. We're delighted to be joined once again. Nearly becomes a regular occurrence now. We're delighted to be joined by Ian Gaughran. How are you, mate?
Yeah, very good. Still pretty much wasn't after the weekend, and things haven't stopped. As you know, as we'll speak about, don't like to stand still. So I've stayed busy over the course of the week. Took a few days off, but I don't know in this game if you ever really get that much time off, yourself. So it's been busy. The phone hasn't stopped ringing, and I think people were happy with how the show went. Obviously, we're very happy within our own camp with how Graham and Jamie went, and obviously we'll touch on that. But yeah, it was a great couple of days between weigh-in day and fight night, and we got the results that obviously we were looking for, and plenty is probably going to come out of it. So yeah, very, very happy, and looking to kick on.
I guess a good thing, obviously, if your phone hasn't stopped ringing, it means that obviously people are getting to know more of who you are, obviously, of the work you've done. I think like anybody, obviously when one show finishes, the buzz is there to get going again. And I say I haven't seen anybody's posts that sort of said anything bad about the show, unless obviously their fighter got beat or something like that. But obviously it's a really good start for you, I guess, in terms of co-promoting a show with Mark. Everything seemed to go well. Very good matched up fights. I guess we probably had a shock, and obviously Cian Doyle getting beat. Good debut, obviously, for Danny Sullivan as well. And the main event, I guess more than anything, that the main event sort of built up exactly how it was going to be. That it was a really good fight. I watched it back there again today. Really, really good fight. And people could definitely get value for their money.
Yeah, I think from top to bottom, there was plenty in it. Daniel O'Sullivan, I was actually very impressed with Daniel O'Sullivan. He was very, very calm. Even backstage getting ready, I was thinking to myself, is this fella, has he grasped maybe the enormity of what he's done? Because he has no real previous, there's no real amateur background or something. He's basically, for want of a better word, he's been a gym rat down in Celtic Warriors, and he's learned his trade with all those professionals. It was great to see Craig O'Brien backstage with him doing his corner and that, So it's a good gym. He's got the likes of Spike and Craig, and obviously Pascal's been around the block God knows how many times. And from being down there down the years, I've seen down training, I've seen him kind of on the pads, hitting the pads. So all he knows is the professional game, and he knew straight away within the first minute that he was just at home, in a professional ring, and he dominated from start to finish. I was really impressed with, as I said, his calmness, the way he went about his business. Looks like he's got a serious tank. Now I know he wasn't pressed, and he didn't have all that much coming back. He barely broke a sweat. Wasn't out of breath. Was really kind of careful and selected his shots, and he's got a big old right hand. Came over a couple of times early on and it hurt his opponent. And probably could have got him out a little bit earlier, but the rounds were at this stage in your career the most important thing, and he had a good crowd with him, and they all seemed to enjoy it. So it was a perfect kind of start to the evening. We had our dinners in and that kind of thing, and he got the ball rolling lovely.
I guess I know he's been involved obviously in doing corner with Eric, and he actually done the corner for Lynn Harvey as well. So he was sort of saying afterwards, it's sort of that experience of being around the ring and everything else. I guess he wasn't sort of like Bambi and Ice walking to the ring, because he'd already made the ring walks with other people before. So it was probably just nerves to know that he was actually in the opposite side of the ropes and having a go. But I was very, very impressed. Brilliant left hook to the body, and it seemed to be an unorthodox right hand he seemed to throw. It nearly just seemed to be it was from he was hiding it very well, and very, very impressive, very, very impressive debut. And I guess the thing is he's back in the gym. He's looking at fight news again already. Like I guess like anybody does, you get your debut out of the way, and then all of a sudden you're going, where's the next one? Give me another fight.
Yeah, I was very impressed. I think McGivern was there, and there was a couple of people beside us. And you could see with that right hand, and as you said, that left hook to the body, and people go, Jesus, why can punch? Because he doesn't look, you'd see him in a t-shirt, and he just looks like this slight little thing. Then he takes off the top, and you go, holy crap. man's absolutely ripped. And he obviously just worked very, very hard and he's honed in on what he can do, and they know full well what he can do. And he's just, obviously he's seen it. He's been down there, I think, living in that gym basically for the last 4 or 5 years. He lives and breathes clearly professional boxing. So you can see it and it's told. And you would be excited for him because he's young and he's calm and he's at home. So I think he's bright enough future, to be fair.
He definitely does. And obviously then fight 2 tonight was obviously, I guess, I know Jamie obviously said afterwards, but it sort of said that, the Ben McGivern fight obviously been announced in advance, was sort of nearly about ways that it could put him off. And, fair play to Seamus Devlin. He came again and gave a good account of himself, and I know Seamus is back in action tomorrow night in his 33rd pro fight in 11 months. It's quite scary to think, but I guess Jamie done what he needed to do. He got the job done, and in 2 weeks' time, he'll be hoping to add some more silverware to Ian Gaughran's stable.
Yeah, two out of 2 would be nice in the space of a couple of weeks. Jamie was quite impressive, wasn't he? He's a freak. He's so big. He's 6'4" or 5" or whatever he is. He's a really big man. So to get down to 12 stone, I think was 12 stone 1 and a bit. Which obviously 3 weeks before a fight, it's just to get that feeling of getting down to championship weight. But he looked kind of like you could see on the scale that's about minimum. And for someone that tall to get down to that weight, it would be about minimum. But he really refueled properly. He obviously knows. Jamie has so much combat sports experience from his previous, Muay Thai scene and all that. He knows what he's doing, and he did it right. He refueled the right way. The team there, they know what they're doing now between Graham and Jamie, and obviously we'll talk about David Ryan in a bit. They know what they're doing with regards to the weight cuts, and they refuel the right way. They don't just guzzle back a couple of litres of water straight away, and it's done properly. And you can see on a fight like Jamie was huge, and he was really, really dominant. You can see at the start of every round, he does this prance thing, and he's so big. You kind of go, Jesus, he can move. He's got good feet. He's got a real long jab, and he does this feint. And Seamus didn't know what to do, and you could see. And I know Seamus had come to fight, I think, in his previous fight in Glasgow. So there was, like, people were saying, you want to be careful, Seamus. He's kind of grown in confidence and all that. But as soon as he realised what he was in Jamie, a big, huge, strong super middle. Jamie was probably in a light heavy at that stage. He was really good. I know. Instantly after the fight, Jamie said, "I missed a few shots and the sharpness wasn't there." But he had been 6 months out of the ring. And when I watched it back on YouTube afterwards, when Mark sent out the official videos, I thought Jamie did very little wrong. Maybe a tiny little bit of rust, but it was pretty much the perfect preparation. Seamus knew after about a minute that he was going over, and Seamus kind of ran and hid a little bit. Maybe he's protecting himself for this record that he's looking to get in the calendar or in the 12-month period. Or maybe he just knew, shit, I've got nothing here for this fella. This fella's way too big, way too strong, too much movement and too much talent. And it's difficult sometimes when you're in there and the opponent doesn't want to know. But I thought Jamie's shot selection was putting a real nice jab, real loose, and the way he feints with the big high right hand, it's really, really good. And I think he's got a superb chance of winning that belt now in 2 weeks' time.
There's a crazy height difference between obviously him and Ben McGivern. I think Ben McGivern, if you always believed anything at BoxRec says it, I think Ben McGivern's only about 5'7", 5'8", maybe. Yeah. So there's obviously a big height difference. But I spoke to Seamus obviously after the fight because he's quite a bubbly guy and he's very easy to talk to.
Really good fella.
And he was obviously saying he was very surprised at obviously how long Jamie's arms were. That he was getting jabbed from nowhere and he's going, what's going on? I think probably the only criticism they probably would have said was probably once Jamie learns to sit down, I guess, a bit in his punches, he's going to develop an extra 20 or 30% more power. And it's probably nice to see. And I'm not sure if obviously Seamus had said anything to Jamie afterwards, giving him tips. But it's obviously nice to hear that that he was impressed with someone that he'd never heard of before. And he was sort of going, look, do this or do this and you'll do even more. And I guess not giving too much away because probably Ben McGivern could end up watching an interview. But obviously Jamie obviously really has to fancy his chances of bringing home the belt.
Yeah, big time. I spoke to Seamus for a little bit after the fight as well, and he said, someone at 2-0, and he just this big gangly looking fella on the scales, he wasn't expecting him to be that talented. I think he alluded to the fact that he just was, oh, this guy's a little bit different, and that's what it is. Jamie, so big, and as you say, when that power starts to carry through, and that's going to come. Like, he was out of the ring since October. That was his first in 6 months, and he did have a couple of fights cancelled in the meantime. 8 months. It was October, wasn't it? Yeah, 8 months. October. Yeah. Because he was supposed to come back, and it was supposed to be 6 months. Then he had 2 dates cancelled. One was when he was going to be on the undercard when Graham was supposed to fight for that international belt, and that was an unfortunate series of events because obviously there was an abnormality in the brain scan and all that kind of stuff. But Jamie, once he switches on, he's so cool and calm and all that. But once he switches on, backstage, it's like he's all bubbly and he's chatty and all that, and then it's business time. And I thought he was really good when he got in the ring. And I thought it was pretty perfect. I think Ben McGivern is going to want to be a good version of Ben McGivern to stop Jamie. As you said, it's a serious range difference, big height difference. And if Jamie can establish that dominance, if they get it right, and Cian generally doesn't get it wrong with the game plan, if they get it right and Jamie puts it into play and into practice, I think it could be a very long life for Ben McGivern. If he might not get near him. Now, it's boxing and he might just play the inside game and all that. But Jamie can stick and move and box and use that length. And then follow up with the way he feints. He kind of fights a little bit like Paddy Donovan, and you can see that they do a lot of work together. He's got that kind of Lopey style or whatever, and it's hard to read. And then when you have that size, he's a big problem for everybody.
Yeah, definitely a bit of a beast. Obviously, probably the only shock of the night was probably Cian Doyle. Obviously, losing. I was probably more than anything, I was probably shocked at obviously how well Tatenda fought. There's not very often you see a fighter come in at 0-1 and throwing left hooks, right hooks, uppercuts.
He switched every 20 seconds or something. He was switching and switching and switching. Now, in the credit, it obviously in the immediate aftermath, it looked bad because Cian's after being beaten. I know he was eyeing up his own Celtic title shot, but that'll just come down the road. But he was going up by 3 weights. I think realistically he's a super bantam, and he's not even. He'll say himself, he's not even a big super bantam. He fought at lightweight, because we had trouble with the opponents. We had 2 or 3 opponents were pulling out, and we thought that. Cian walked around that time, was good enough. But as it turned out, in hindsight, Tatenda had come down. I know you had said he'd come down from he lost about a stone.
10 kilo.
10 kilos to come down. So realistically, he was a super bantamweight fighting previously a welterweight from him. And I thought Cian was probably unlucky not to get a draw out of it. I think he went back a little bit on his amateur style maybe, and every time he went forward, it was a switch, and he seemed to be walking onto a backhand, and it was like, geez, this just isn't happening. Your man was scoring, and he was scoring, even though Cian was never hurt at any stage. I think the weight told, the switch told, and it was just kind of one of those fights that ended up being ill-timed. And I suppose, as promoters and matchmakers, maybe a little bit that's down to us. But, Cian's a good kid, and he was making the right noises after the fight, and I spoke to him the next morning, and he's making the right noises then. They'll get back to work, and look, he's a good fighter, and he's a very good fighter down at super bantam, So I think a defeat at lightweight at this stage of his career with a fella who had come down, and who now I spoke to his coach the next morning at breakfast in the hotel. Tatenda now was talking about selling tickets and scrapping the whole going road thing because he's after gaining so much confidence out of it. So you would kind of hope, for Cian's sake, that he goes and wins a few fights, and it actually doesn't look like a bad defeat whatsoever. Do you know what I mean? So we'll see, but I don't think there's really much to lose in that defeat, insofar as he went up in 3 weights and the man came down a bit, and he'll look. Fortunate manager knows exactly what he's doing, and he'll get it right. I'm sure the King will be out twice or three times probably before the end of the year. And you'll see him, he'll be 5-1, and he'll be back on the verge of titles, if not in a title fight by the end of the year.
I think it's sort of said to him afterwards, you're young in the game, you're only a few fights in, defeat's not the end of the world. You can learn from it and you come back. It's not even his true fighting weight. So, and he seemed positive enough when he was leaving Europa. He was coming inside with two big pizzas. So he was definitely obviously hungry and ready to put on a few pounds. But knowing Cian will obviously come back, and he'll come back stronger from.
Oh, no doubt at all. He's in a good gym with a good manager. They'll rectify that, no problem.
Before obviously go on to the main event, obviously two of Mark's obviously fighters, obviously Neill and Colm Murphy. I think probably maybe that was your first time, maybe potentially. Well, I think you've seen Colm in action maybe the last time up there.
I saw, Colm fought in the Europa the last time on the night Graham fought Seamus Devlin, and I was really impressed with Colm that night. Even though he ended up getting into a bit of a bang with the man Mayrena, but Jesus, I was massively impressed on Saturday night. Colm, he thought about it a lot more. He boxed, and he still likes to get drawn in to a bit of a scrap. I think I saw the middle 3 rounds. I think I saw 3, 4, and 5, because I think that was the one that was on before Graham's fight. So I was kind of in and out and in with Graham. But in the 3 rounds I saw, I was very, very impressed. I thought he learned a lot from the war that he'd gone through just 5 or 6 weeks previous. And he boxed well, and he looks about 12. But speaking to him after, he's a good kid. He's a very intelligent boy, and I think he's a massive, massive problem for Rudy Farrell. I like Rudy; he's a nice boxer as well. But I was very impressed with what Colm's done. I think what Colm has done in his last 2 fights against Gomez and Mayrena will massively stand to him. Colm was, I don't think anybody would have too many arguments in saying he was more impressive against Gomez than Will O'Hayden was a few weeks previous. Could have had a little tiny bit of trouble at times. Colm didn't have any trouble. Colm was very impressive. I just liked the way he thought the fight out compared to the last time, and still likes to go and have a little bang. And like he said this week, that fair balls to Rudy for taking the fight. They know they have a little bit of history from the amateurs, so that looks like a nice fight there. Now, what's that? August the 16th? Is that right?
August 6th
on the Conlon show. So that's a cracker to set things up.
I know obviously Rudy Farrell obviously sat behind me at stages, obviously in the fight, and I was sort of going, I already knew the fight was to be announced afterwards and everything else, and I was going, it's maybe the worst thing in the world you can do sometimes is watching your opponent before you're going to fight them, because I was nothing but impressed with Murphy.
I'm very impressed. I really was very impressed.
Murphy will rightly go in as a favourite, obviously, just on what he's done so far as a pro. He's had 2 really good stern tests so far. All his fights have been 6-rounders. Rudy's obviously had a stoppage. He had a stoppage in Estonia in round 2. He had a stoppage the last time out, and obviously won in points. So he doesn't really have a lot of experience probably over the last couple of years, because he's been trying to become a pro since the end of 2018. So he's had a lot of inactivity, whereas Colm Murphy just seems to be getting better and better and better. But rightly, Colm staying grounded and, saying fair play to Rudy for taking the fight. He's not getting ahead of himself. I sort of a bit of back and forth with someone yesterday, and it's like, regardless of what if Murphy's 99% chance of winning, there's still a 1% chance that Farrell can win. So you can never write your fighter off.
I wouldn't quite class it as that much as an overwhelming problem, because clearly Farrell is quite talented. And I know that Mark rates him. I would have Murphy down as a favourite, but it's similar enough to what the main event was on Saturday. It's a 50-50 if you want to call it a 50-50. It's not like Rudy's been brought in for Colm as a cheap title fight. This is a genuine, and there's a little bit of history, So Rudy's going to fancy his chances, and I certainly wouldn't be surprised if he wins. But from what I've seen of Murphy up close and personal, I've been very impressed. And maybe there's a little bit of kind of bias towards him, because I like the kid. Had a good chat with him on Sunday or on Saturday night, and he's a very likable fella, very well spoken. It seems to be quite grounded. He was up for a little while. He said he was going to go home and wasn't going to stay out. Just going to get himself head down and, you know, move on to the next one. And I like that. And obviously he can go in the ring. So he's probably favourite. But yeah, it's no foregone conclusion.
I guess it'll be depending on obviously where it slots in the card and how many people's in the venue, because both of them are still young as well. So one of them's probably going to be more nervous than the other, and being in the SSE arena with maybe quite a crowd there.
I would imagine it'll be high enough up. Well, it depends on who they bring in. But as you say, they're two local boys with decent followings. And it looks like it has the potential to be a very good scrap. So, you know, it mightn't be Colm or anything like that, but it could be fourth last and it could be quite high enough in the bill. You know, people like watching two local boys having a go. And that's what they've got in what looks like a decent fight.
I guess with it being a belt on the line as well, it might just be maybe potentially, you know, I know TV hasn't been sorted out yet, but it might be, say, for instance, before the TV starts, you know, so we'll get them a good crowd, about 6, half 6 or something like that. But it'll all depend on who holds their nerve, I guess, the most, more than anything. Obviously, Owen Neill making his debut as well, obviously, on Mark's show. And, you know, here's another guy. He's another guy who's obviously been out of action at the same time since Jamie. Obviously, both of them fought on the Celtic Clash card. Just seemed to be as if he hadn't been out of the ring at all. You know, I know he's been saying since that he's sort of going to try and keep himself in that gym environment now and not put on too much weight between fights. And I think he's a bit between the teeth. The change in management's probably going to add an extra 10 or 20% to what we've already seen of him.
He's well supported as well. They made plenty of noise. It was kind of like a football atmosphere when he came out, and they kept going. Now the opponent made it kind of entertaining. He was ducking and diving, and he kind of had a bit of fun in there. But I liked the way Owen went about his business. He's spiteful with his shots. He likes to throw. It's almost like I was impressed with the gas tank. I know people were saying, "Oh, relax and conserve your energy." But he kept going with that, real, especially to the body. The hooks to the body. He was just really trying to whip them in. And he gave it a good fair old whack for 6 rounds. Now, saying that, I know he drives a taxi, I think, doesn't he? It's hard when you're trying to keep the weight down. You're just sitting for long periods of the day. But he's, I think he could even go down to welter if he, in a couple of fights. And he's dangerous down there, you know. Super welter, light middle. You've got plenty there for him. You've got the likes of Donegan, who can go back down from middle, who gave a good account of himself. You've got the likes of Owen Duffy. There's plenty at light middle that you could set on up for, you know, for a Celtic shot and beyond. So it would all depend on what he wants to do. As you say, he wants to get back into that gym environment. Is he better off for now at light middle and being comfortable there because he still carries plenty of power? You know, or does he go down? But as I spoke with Mark, and as you say, he was impressive, and he kind of kept pouring it on as the fight went on. And there's definitely options there for him. And he sells a lot of tickets, so the crowd were buzzing. It was kind of, even after his fight, there was a little bit of a lull because it was just kind of so crazy when he was in such an entertaining fight. So, you know, he's one with a bright future. What's he, 8-0 now?
8-0 now, yeah.
Yeah, so like he's on the verge of domestic titles as well. You know, he's got his early stuff done. It's a case of finding the right opportunities for him, and he's eligible. Obviously, he's had 6 rounds. So he's interesting to see what he wants to do. I know he enjoyed himself. I think he was he saying that it was one of the best nights of his career, that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, when you're enjoying yourself with that, you want to have that again. When you put on such a good performance, you do feel like you can step up. So I'd be interested to see what he does next, and I know Mark will have a plan for him. So Mark has plans for a few things in the pipeline for kind of autumn and into the winter. So I'm sure Owen will be a factor in that.
And obviously on the main event, then I guess it lived up to the billing. Probably
good, doesn't it?
I think we probably could have deserved a bit more back and forth. They seemed to have more back and forth over the last couple of years, and sort of when the fight was announced, it was sort of, there wasn't really too much going on. I guess probably in some ways maybe Dominic obviously deciding to take a sabbatical sort of from doing interviews, sort of wasn't able to build things up. When obviously we done ours initially with Graham, wasn't aware of the fight, the the belt was still going to be on the line, so sort of delaying getting interviews out. But it lived up to it, I guess. Probably didn't need the trash talk, sort of. It lived up to its billing in the fight.
Yeah, I thought it was brilliant. And I know Dom just didn't want to get involved in the verbals. He said, I've done all my talking down the years. That's why I want to focus on the fight. Don't forget, he had come in off a bad year last year. And a lot was on the line for him. Now, if the fight hadn't have gone the way it had, if Graham had just dominated and stopped him after 4 or 5, Dom would have had a lot of questions to ask himself. As to where's he going, what's he doing? But from round 1, from the opening bell, he came out and he was sitting down on his shots. The jab was crisp. He was playing nicely with that long uppercut, and he certainly took the first round. I'd imagine that's how the referee scored it. I'd say it was 1. And I think after the first round, Mark looked at me. Graham had gone back into the corner, and Graham was doing this slouchy thing in the corner, and he looked knackered. And Mark said, "He's wrecked. I'm telling you that way he cuts after blah, blah, blah." And I said, "This always happens. He starts slow and he looks tired, and you come on." Now, I had to admit, I was like, Jesus, Dom looked good there. Are we in a bit more trouble than we actually had originally anticipated? But Graham settled down. Once he settled down into the second, and he got in and got inside and sat where he wanted to be, then he started to cause problems for Dom. And he's quick with those inside combinations, and his movement has become so much better. He was playing with the angles, and he was throwing that little lead jab and getting out. And I think at times he was starting to bamboozle Dom a little bit in maybe second, third, fourth and fifth were tight enough. But the way Graham responded to the first round and the way he drew Dom into his kind of fight was impressive. And that was part of the game plan. And I know I could hear it in Dom's corner that they were telling him to, push on and keep getting on Graham. But Graham doesn't wilt. Graham will never tire, because especially in this fight, he felt that this was his time for him to take that step up. He worked his arse off all through camp. And as these fights go on, Graham gets stronger and stronger. And you can see that Dom probably took the 6th. Graham finished strong, took 7 and 8. But you have to credit to both of them, because it was a smashing fight. And I don't think Dom lost anything in defeat from his reputation. I think actually his stock probably grew a little bit, because he, as I said before, he had a lot to lose with the comprehensive defeat. But the way he took a couple of rounds and he shared around probably, and he would probably argue that he maybe took 4 or 5 or whatever the middle round was that was tight. So I think he's well able to come again. He can get back himself, a couple of quick wins, and then step back up to 6 rounds against a half decent opponent, and then see where he's at. Because he didn't wilt. He gave as good as he got, and he was probably just beaten by better tactical fight and probably just a better man on the night. But you have to give credit to Graham. I know he's spoken to you loads of times, and you're fond of him, and everybody's fond of him. But he's the leader for that team in Treaty Boxing, and he really went out there and showed the lads what's there for you when you're able to make those sacrifices and put that effort in. He's not a sheep. You'd say he's a wolf. And that's kind of, he doesn't follow the crowd. He never really had any interest in going to 8-0 and this kind of crap. He'd give him a fight that he reckons is a nice fair fight, and Graham would jump in it. And that's what he's starting to reap the rewards of the hard work he's put in with Cian over the last few years. And I'm delighted for him. Absolutely over the moon for the fellow, because he deserves it. And now he deserves what's coming next. He's in prime position now to fight for the Irish title, and if he goes and wins that, automatically ranked in Europe, and who knows with Graham. But we're working bullets off to get him to where he needs to be.
I'm just looking at the time, obviously, with Zoom giving it 40 minutes. With 3 minutes left, and I guess it probably just comes in well on obviously we announced this initially whenever you done your first interview, but obviously it's just been announced that you have a new signing in Dave Ryan. He obviously impressed the BUI, and I guess now it's getting the license all sorted and getting him out in his debut.
Yeah, he's been officially granted his license. He sparred the other day. He sparred with Cian Kelly. And I know Mel Crystal, the BUI president, went down to see him, and Mel was very impressed with what he saw. As we spoke about before, Dave, he's an Irish, European, and world champion, and he's relentless. And he's got that experience of fighting on big nights and winning titles. So he's one I'm really, really excited about. He lives and breathes work. You know, he trains hard. His missus is personal trainer. She's ripped herself. The two of them just never stop. He's a cardio machine. He hits like a truck, and he's going to be a major problem for everyone. He'll go in and have a couple of fights to kind of shake off that little bit of rawness he has. But he's with the perfect trainer in Cian, and I'm really looking forward to what he can do. I really am. He's very, very excited.
Quite a buzz in that, Jim. Obviously, you know.
Yeah.
I think I was speaking to ones the other day, and I was going, it's infectious. Obviously, you know, the success that Graham's had is now going to lead on to Jamie. It's obviously going to lead into other fighters in the gym, and Limerick just needs a show. You know, that's all it's missing now. They need a show. They obviously praise the fighters for what they've done the last couple of years in keeping Limerick on the map, and they're making Limerick proud of what they're doing. So, you know, I guess only time will tell and who can get in and get a show on.
Yeah, it's something we're looking at. It's something I've been looking at. It's a case of trying to get the venue to back these local fighters, and then the big problem is trying to get the fight insured and get the night insured. But it's something I promised Graham I'll put a show on down there. I intend to keep that promise, and especially now that we've got the stable that's buzzing. You know, Jamie can win his title. We'll have 2 belts. You know, there's the potential to have 2 Irish title fights down there. Dave sorry, I know that we spoke about Dave. We'll be looking to get him out in the autumn. He's going to be going away on holidays in the summer, so he'll work. He'll go on holidays. He'll stay fit during his holidays. He'll work again, and he'll make his debut. So we'll have the 3 lads looking to get them out. If we can get something down there for the end of the year, it'd be fantastic. But it is something that's a kind of medium-term goal to put one on down there. I'm looking forward to it. If we can get it done, we will get it done.
Definitely. Well, look, I know the timer's just about to go out here. Obviously, we'll thank you once again for coming on and having a chat with us. And no doubt we'll have you back on again soon, Ian.
Fingers crossed. Thanks a lot, Steve.
All right, cheers, Ian. Take care.
Cheers.
Thanks. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.